So inside of a trailer park, surrounded by cornfields on the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio. 5 years old, I wake up one night, in the middle of the night, my entire body is on fire from the inside. I can't move, can't get out of bed, tears streaming down my face, and I'm just thinking and praying at this moment, please God, somebody help me have the energy to crawl out of this bed and get help. Get help. And it took like what felt like an hour. I don't know exactly how long it was, but I was able to crawl from my bed to my parents' room at the other end of the trailer and get their attention, get help, get to the hospital, figure out what's going on. And I was diagnosed with a severe form of juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. If anybody knows what that is, it's a chronic disease that causes your nervous system to attack all of the connective tissue in your body and cause severe inflammation. I was getting temperatures of 107 degrees every single week. My parents were putting me in ice baths. I was having vivid hallucinations of the end of the world, and I was suicidal. I didn't want to live, right? And I was going through that, and you know, we all have our own form of winter, but for me, that was my first winter. That was my first time I had to try to figure out a way out. I didn't know. Nobody understood really what I was going through, right? And I think sometimes when we get in these winters, it's tough. It feels isolated. I feel like I now call it the disease of disconnection. My body's connective tissue was breaking down. And the best way I could describe it, it was like my body was cast into the eternal lake of fire, abandoned by God in love. That's what it felt like. And that went on for 15 months. And by the grace of God, I was healed. My body went into a spontaneous remission. They don't know why it happened. The doctors wanted to pay my parents to do testing on me. Luckily, they said no, turned the money away. I was done being shot with steroids and different medications to deal with the pain management. And I always say my life has gotten better ever since. That was the hardest winter. And so, you know, maybe you're out here and you're watching, you're here with us, and you've had a winter time in your life. Maybe it was physical, maybe it was economic, right? I don't know what that winter was for you. But what we're going to talk about today is really, it's a mentality more than anything. It's a mentality that's going to get you through the winter. It's that warrior mentality. And we really are in solar. I've been doing this 11 years now. I've been through a lot, seen hundreds of companies come and go. Worked with a lot of amazing people, seen, you know, just really good, really bad, lots of ups and downs. And so it takes a special kind of person to do this job. You know, I always tell people, we'll talk about a little bit later in the story, that I'm kind of negative, you'll find. I always say I have the most negative sales presentation you've ever seen. If you watch me, sometimes people come and shadow me. They're like, why would you spent all of this time talking about all of the bad things? And I'm like, yeah, I do that. For one, because it's authentic, it's me, it's my style. And then two, I do it because it builds trust. People trust, they don't trust a salesperson who's just going to tell them all the great, positive, amazing things. And so I just want to use this as a moment to really think back to some of your stories, some of your struggles and challenges. And I would encourage you to find a platform and to find a way to integrate that unique part of your struggle and challenge into your process, into your sale, into your connection with homeowners, because that's what makes you you. We just did a recent training this past Tuesday on Strengths Finders. Some of you guys were on that. I call it your X factor. We use the X-Men metaphor, but basically the X factor in the business is you. Why would they do solar with you versus anybody else? You know, a lot of times us professionals, we go into a house. I was just closed one last night. They've had tons of people sit with them, right? And I love whenever I sit with somebody that, oh, I've already sat with 10 companies, and I go, amazing, because I know they haven't sat with me, right? And so you really need to find that for you and develop that story, and that's something that I do is I help coach and mentor, and that's a part of what I feel like my next step in this industry is going to be, is to really help the leaders level up into that next, you know, that next step, which I think is sharing your story, getting good at sharing that story. I've spent a lot of time and money and energy practicing sharing these stories. But let's get into the tactical. I know you guys want to get some value. You guys want to get some money in your pockets. I'm always very practical in that way. Guaranteed, anybody watching or listening to this, I guarantee within the next month, you're going to get at least 5 figures, if not more, worth of results. That's my guarantee to you right now in this presentation. So here's some of the stuff we're going to go through today. Let's jump right in. So referral mindsets. So before you guys go into a sale, there's a mentality that you have to have before you're going to get a referral. So here's a few of them. I always say to all my sellers, mention referrals early and often, sometimes as early as the initial conversation on the phone, the discovery call, right? You start planting these seeds. I'm going to start going into the pitch, what I say, when I say it. We're going to get really tactical for a bit, because a lot of times you'll hear these great trainings, they sound really good, but then you actually go to implement and you get scared, nervous, it feels weird, and I think for me, I want this to be accessible. I want this to be something that anybody can do. Anybody can actually start getting referrals today if you implement some of these things. So regardless of how they met you, whether you knocked on their door, you got a lead, it was whatever, it's always your primary business is referrals. So, I'll tell people when I meet with them, I'll say, hey, generally speaking, I know I met you X way, but usually how I do my business is referral based. And so if everything makes sense today, we're going to talk about a great referral program later, but let's first see if your house qualifies, right? And so the identity part, so referral king, queen. So this is actually like a meditation I do. We're not going to go into that today. We've already done enough of that. But the referral king, I literally would sit and meditate and imagine myself sitting on a throne, a little egotistical maybe, sitting on a throne, but literally just imagining energetic people coming to me, people pulling in referrals, people saying, you know what, I'm going to call Jonathan, you know what, and imagine that for you. Imagine yourself as the kind of person that has the kind of quality of person that people want to refer, right? And that's what that's about. We're going to talk about how to coach your customers. A lot of people, reps do this. Maybe they'll ask for referrals, but they're not coaching them. They're not telling them what to say. You have to actually give them the steps. You have to make it simple, because if you don't give them that, you can say, oh, hey, if you like this program, you can refer me. A lot of reps will say things like that, but it never goes anywhere. Who's had a referral that they've gotten and it went nowhere, right? Everyone's had that. I'm going to teach you today how to turn the 5% or so of your customer base that's going to refer you into about 25 to 30% of your customer base that's going to refer you. Who wants that? Right? That's what we want to do. I'm going to teach you strategies for how to make more customers feel comfortable referring you, because a lot of people don't feel comfortable. I always say selling your friends and family for $1,000 referral, right? Who feels comfortable doing that? Most people don't. It feels kind of weird. And so we need to take out that weird factor and make this something that's helping. Everybody wants to help their friends and family, but if there's money involved, it makes it weird. So I'm going to teach you some ways to soften that approach. Getting referrals is important as the close. So a lot of people, this is a mentality, they treat the close as their most important thing, but they don't treat getting a referral that important. So like they'll schedule a time to go out to the house to get docs signed or whatever that is, but they don't schedule a time in their process to sit down and ask for the referrals. That if you're not doing that, you're missing out on hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars, literally. Any customer can be turned into an ambassador at any time, or non-customer. I've actually had customers who've signed with somebody else because of price or some other factor, and then said, you know what, I really trust you. You're the expert. You spent the time. You invested into this. Can I refer you? And I go, of course, you can refer me. Glad to help anybody out. So just keep that mentality open. It's an open mindset, because if your mindset is, oh, I can only get referrals at this time in the process, or oh, I missed the opportunity to ask for referrals. They've been installed for 6 months, or I haven't talked to that customer in a year. Oh, I'm a bad salesperson. You start telling yourself these stories, maybe guilt trip or whatever the story is. That's not true. Delete that. That's just a BS belief system. And the reality is you can get a referral from anybody at any time when you choose. Are you guys with me? Yeah. Let's do it. Let's go. So pitch and process. So these are some of the times in the process when I'm pitching, what I say, why I say it, kind of why it makes sense to say it. So it's not an exact science. This is probably the only part of the presentation where it's a little bit of an art form, right? So when I introduce the program, it could be at different points in the process depending on the situation, right? It's a little bit situational, but let's just say as a general rule, I'm going to intro this towards the end of my close. And the reason why I do that is it takes their mind off of, I just made a 25-year commitment. What is going to happen? What if this happens? What if? Now they're thinking, well, what if I talked to my friend Susan about this? What if I actually, what if I actually told some of my coworkers? You want to change that what if story into a what if I tell this person, right? And so I do it towards the end. That's just a general principle. But what I'll do is I always like to frame in sales what's called a pullback. And so a pullback means you demonstrate value, but it's not just a giveaway. If you just give somebody something without them having to work for it, psychologically, it actually triggers defense mechanisms. It makes you feel like, well, this is too good to be true, right? Who's had somebody say in a solar sale, this sounds too good to be true? That means you did a bad job. Put your hand down. No, right? No, that's not a good sign. You don't want that, right? And so you want to actually pull it back. So how that'll sound is I'll say something like, hey, Cynthia, if this makes sense and your house qualifies, we have a really great referral program, but let's actually get that site survey done first and wait and see. If it does make sense, we'll get into that later, okay? So I plant the seed, I mention it, but I'm not pushing it, right? I'm pulling it back. So I say that. Another thing I'll say throughout my process, and sometimes it can be during the customer service portion or even during the end portion, I'll say, look, my goal is to provide such a high level of service for you that you want to refer me to your friends and family. That's my selfish goal. So like, hey, if you guys are happy with the product, the price, the service, you guys would be comfortable referring me, right? Cool. But here's the thing, I'm not asking for it right now. Now, some people have different approaches. That's just my approach. I like to assume the sale, as they say, with the referral, but not push the sale for the referral, if that makes sense. So it's there, it's in their mind, they're thinking about it, but they're not being asked to take action right then. So I always say in sales, one of the key tricks is to defer decision making. Whether you're closing the sale or closing the referral sale, they're two separate sales. You need to defer the decision making process because people don't like to make decisions. That's why they don't go solar a lot of times. Well, I gotta, let me think about it. Everyone's heard, let me think about it. That's the most classic in sales. So when I close or when I'm asking for referrals, it's always hey, you don't have to make a final decision today. Let's get the results. Let's at least get you in the process. Then you can think about your questions over the next 3 to 4 weeks while we're processing everything. Write down these questions, and then when we touch base after the survey, we'll answer any of those questions you have, and then you can make that decision on your own without me present. I'm not here to pressure anyone to make a decision today. I'm just here to give you guys the information. Is that fair? Cool. So coach them. So let me get into the coaching in a minute, but bottom line here is 10 to 20 minutes of coaching. So a lot of people are spending like 1 to 5 minutes talking about referrals, and that's your problem. You're not talking enough about how to do a referral properly, because if you get a referral and it's not set up properly, you might as well have just gotten a cold lead. You might as well have just gotten the phone book, opened it up and pointed at a phone number. It's not going to go anywhere. And so you need to coach them on how to set that referral up, create a deadline. We're going to talk about creating promotional offers, and then have a system of following up. We call it FU money in solar, right? Follow-up money, right? So if you want to have follow-up money in solar, you got to have a system in place where you can capture these ambassadors and activate them. And we're going to teach you how to do that with promotional offers, okay? So here's the program. I call it my green team. You can call it whatever you want. I've heard people call it their A team. Give it a name because it's official then, right? I'm going to teach you best practices right here. I don't always practice best practices, to be fair. And that is because, print material, you can do it. I have these little cards, like kind of postcards made up where I'll give it to them or I'll write down the referrals. I find that stuff's more useful for me as the seller than it is for the homeowner. Usually the homeowners, in my experience, aren't going to write it down or do that. But what it does is if you have something tangible in your process, then it kind of holds yourself accountable. So you're like, okay, well, I got to go take this card out and fill it out. And that's your process. Oh, I need to get 5 names and numbers. So have a process, because here's the thing. What's easy to do is also easy not to do, as Jim Rohn says, right? So it's easy to ask for referrals, but because of that, it's also easy to just let it pass. And then you start telling yourself the story, oh, I missed the window of opportunity. Now I can't ask for referrals. And I've done it. Everybody's done it. But here's another kind of hack, if you will. You want to try to attach the money to something of meaning for them, right? And so one of my mentors who taught me, my brother Richard out here, how to do this is this guy named Matt Crowther. He was a mentor of mine. I remember in 2018 when I first started doing 100% referrals, he sat with me. We were in a Cafe Rio, and he said, yeah, here's how I do my business. I actually sit with the homeowner during the close and I ask them, I say, hey, what's like your favorite vacation you guys have ever been on? Like, tell me about that. And then it puts them into state, as we call it. It puts their emotional state into, oh, I went to here, I was with my wife, I was with whatever, you know. Now they're associating that emotional experience with you because now you're sharing it. And then what you do is you tie that experience to the referral program. Hey, we have a program where we can actually send you and your wife on your next dream vacation. Jordan does this fantastically. He's actually somebody I'm taking notes from. So this is a way that you start to anchor these emotional states at some of their peak experiences, really. These are the peak experiences of these people's lives, and now it's tied to you and your solar referral business, right? Instruct them to do a group text intro, a simple hack. A lot of people miss this one. This is my scripting of how I say this. So when I'm sitting with the homeowner on Zoom, I'll say, you know, let me pick on you, Jordan. So I'll say, hey, Jordan, you know, I don't want to be that weird guy that cold calls your friend or family at a weird time and interrupt their day. So what I found that's really effective is if you can just put me in a group text and introduce me, that way we can find a time to hop on a phone call when it's best for them, right? So when you say it that way, it actually makes it easier because, again, people want to refer you. Who's had a customer say, oh, I've got XYZ people, they're going to refer you, but they never refer you? That's on you. That's not on the customer. It's because you don't have a process. You don't have a way to capture it. So we're going to talk about how do you build this into your process. So coaching steps, here's how you coach them. So that 10 to 20 minute coaching session, here's what that looks like. So generally speaking, I'm going to do this at install or right around install. Now, the reason why is that in their entire customer experience arc, the peak of the customer's happiness, if you will, is at install day. That's when they're the most excited. You want to capitalize on that energy when they're in the right state of mind, okay? So when you go for the close, or you go for the sit down at the install, you know, swing by, you know, show up with Gatorades, donuts, whatever you bring for your installers, and then you transition into the house, sit with them. They're usually in a really great mood. It's an easy conversation. But you say, hey, remember how I told you about that referral program? I actually wanted to let you know, and this is where you give an offer. You say, we're actually doing something special right now. Remember I mentioned that $1,000 referral program? Well, on top of that, our company's actually covering the next 6 months of power or ... whatever the promotion is, if you refer me somebody by the end of August. Right? Give it a deadline. Make sure it's within a week or two because people don't act, generally speaking, unless there's some urgency to act. So create urgency, create a deadline. And so for me, I found every quarter or so, I roll out new offers. So this is how you activate existing customers. So let's say you have customers from years ago, and I've even recently gotten customers from 5 years ago. I've sold deals. I will do this every quarter. I'll spend a few days just on the phones, call. And when I'm calling those customers, I'm doing 3 steps. So write these down. These aren't on the slide. Some of this stuff is just off the top. So there's 3 steps you do when you do this call. First step you're going to do is obviously introduction, some sort of rapport, something you remember from a past conversation. Hey, how's so-and-so? How's your kid? How's your whatever the previous conversation. Take notes if you have a CRM, but just recall that, share. Cool. So that's the first one, connect, rapport. Second step is you're going to lead with service. So the service you provide is utility bill review, right? Hey, do me a favor. I'm actually doing a check for your utility bill, making sure you're getting the proper credits for solar. So go ahead and download your recent Edison statement and send that to me. I'm going to take a look at that and then get back to you and let you know how your system is performing, right? So they're going to be, it's like a service. They're grateful. Now, obviously in sales, whenever you give, the reciprocity is triggered. They want to give back. So this is the third step. The third step is give an offer, right? And this is where I cycle offers. So I'll say again, hey, while I got you on the phone, Jordan, there's actually a new promotion we're running right now. On top of that $1,000 referral, we're actually matching that $1,000 for your friend or family member. So if you know anybody who you've talked to who's maybe on the fence, go ahead and put me in a group text message with them and I'll take it from there. Okay? All right, here's another advanced skill. This is kind of like next level stuff. So in 2019, I incorporated my company. It's called Go Green Now, LLC. That's my enterprise with power. And what I do is I try to build significance with my customers. Just like we have sales competitions within power, I try to make that same type of significance with my customers. So this is actually Kawhi Leonard's grandmother. He's one of the Clippers, if any of you guys watch the NBA. Met her back in 2018 through a referral. Signed her up, found out who she was after 5 or 6 referrals when one of her friends said, "Do you know who that is?" And I said, "No, I don't know who that is." She said, "That's Kawhi Leonard's grandma." And I'm like the basketball player? Yeah. And I'm like, amazing. So this is actually me with my head cut off. I think the person who took the picture didn't like me. Yeah. I was at the Red Hat Ladies Society for this. So it's a group of older, African-American, liberal-leaning. They have a very specific niche that they target. And I'm the exact opposite of that niche, right? So I went and gave a presentation at a Golden Corral there in front of about 40 women. And the lady who took the picture didn't like me, I think, so she cut my head off. So no, we got to recognize her in front of all of her friends. So and I've done this with real estate offices where I will actually bring cash and say, "Hey, Cynthia, do me a favor. I want to actually recognize you in front of everybody. Come up here for a minute. Cynthia referred me to so-and-so. We're going to give her $500 cash right now. Thank you for that." And I've also done these awards as well. So whenever you do that, it gives people that feeling of significance and being special, and that's what they're going to remember. I was actually at her house about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, and she still has that plaque sitting propped up on her kitchen counter when you walk into her kitchen. Right? So that's the kind of impact you can make if you're thoughtful and creative about how you approach your business. Building trust. So I'm one of the most negative salespeople out there. This is something I do that I've never really seen anybody do before. So I'm going to share this and invite you to maybe try this on a sale or two. So I have a whole part of my process. I do it every single time towards the very end, right before I ask for referrals. There's a reason why. So building trust, I'm going to talk about what are the big negatives to solar. So I write these things out on a piece of paper as I'm sharing. So I'll say, hey, one of the biggest problems in solar is the true-up bill. Have you guys heard about that? And they go, no, yeah. Yeah, have you heard about people getting solar and then all of a sudden they're getting hit with a massive bill from the utility company still after they got solar? And they go, oh yeah, I've heard about that. I see that's about 95% of the problems in solar come from this number one issue. And there's a reason why. That's where I get into explaining battery sizing, capacity. I use that to talk about net metering, right? And then I go into roof leaks. Roof leaks, what if the company goes out of business, right? The company's warranty is only as good as the business. I've seen hundreds of companies come and go. And so really, you want to make sure that whoever you're going with is either going to put a third-party insurance policy or you're going to go with a top nationwide provider that, fingers crossed, stays in business long-term. Transferability, obviously talk about this. I'm a huge PPA seller for my first 5 years of my career. I just did ownership. Since 2018, about 95% of my business is just TPO, lease and power purchase agreement. I think I'm one of the best ones at pitching that program. We'll talk about that later. But really, this is the key. Everyone always asks, this is the number one reason why a lot of people don't go solar is because they're worried about what happens if I sell my house, right? You have to master this part of your sales process. This should be the most important part of your sales pitch and process that you're mastering if you're new to this job. And so I'll give you an example script. So I'd say, hey, probably the biggest reason why you guys haven't gone solar is because, like many homeowners, you're worried about what's going to happen if you sell the home. Okay? So with this, there's basically, I'll say it this way, there's 3 types of programs: loans, leases, and power purchase agreements. On paper, technically, all of them are transferable, but they're not all treated the same in the marketplace. So with a loan, even if it is transferable on paper, in my experience, the majority of the time, no homeowner is going to take on a secondary loan on top of the mortgage. They're going to have you pay that off. And in a lot of cases, I know a lot of solar people, they like to talk about increased home value, blah, blah, blah. I sell against that. I tell people the exact opposite. I say, in fact, Mr. Homeowner, this is a big pet peeve of mine. People say this and it's not true. In fact, it's the opposite. You're going to pay for this solar system with the equity that you've built in your property. What is this doing? I'm distancing myself from the solar salesperson. That's not who I am. And I'm doing it by being brutally honest and negative and transparent really about it. So I'll say, then there's a lease. Leases are a little bit more transferable, but again, a lot of the old school leases, and I say old school because back in the day, they used to structure a lease. They would put a lien against the house for the total dollar amount of the lease payments due. So then you see a $30,000 lease. Again, it opens a can of worms for the buyer. Now they're not interested or they want it to be paid off. It's basically the same as a loan in that scenario. And then I talk about the power purchase agreement or modern day leases, which are basically the same these days, which is it's treated like a utility. So here's how I phrase it. I say, basically, Sunnova or whoever the provider is, Sunnova is going to replace your utility provider and provide 100% of the electricity on site, and you just pay for that cheaper power. And when you sell the house, the new owner is going to move in, call the utility company and say, hey, we're the new owners, and whatever rate per kilowatt hour that lease or PPA is locked in at is automatically grandfathered in. Right? So company longevity, I already kind of touched on that, and then poor customer service. So this is the way I tie customer service to me, and this is also a part where I'll say that pitch about, hey, honestly, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, selfishly, I want to do such a good job for you that if anything goes wrong at any time in the process, call me first. I want to be your solar hero, so that way you want to refer me business. And every time I say it, it's because you want to refer me business. So get used to saying that. Assume the sale, you want to refer me business, and shake your head. Little sales. So last part here, and then we'll wrap it up. Is this stuff good? Yeah? Okay, cool. Buying styles. So I love this one. So this is a common thing I see in solar sales, or just sales in general. So a lot of times people will sell based upon their buying style, not the customer's buying style. So I'm going to say that again. A lot of times salespeople sell based upon their buying style, not the homeowner's buying style. Okay? Now, as salespeople, generally speaking, unless you're me, no, we have a profile of being overly optimistic, right? We have a profile of being amplifying the positive potential benefits and minimizing the negative. Oh yeah, if there's a roof leak, not a big deal, or oh, if this happens. Now, what that does is it triggers distrust. It actually triggers a nervous system level fear response, and that's where you get people that cancel after you're out of the door off the Zoom call because they didn't trust you. And there's a reason why they didn't trust you. It's because the way you communicated was like as if everything is sunshine and rainbows and nothing can go wrong and you're going to save a ton of money. And they're going, this guy's full of crap. I'm canceling once I get off this call. Right? So you have to flip that on its head. You have to understand that most people in the world, especially with this negative news culture, we're addicted to negativity, right? One of my favorite Tony Robbins quotes is our number one addiction in humanity is problems, right? That's how we connect. I call it the connective tissue of shame that controls the society. That's a deeper conversation. So this is how we flip that and build trust. You actually want to amplify the potential negatives with your customer and focus on that previous slide, and you want to actually almost make the benefits nonchalant. Like, oh yeah, super cool, you might save some money. Hey, I hope it works out for you, fingers crossed. Hey, I hope the survey comes back good. I know your roof's 20 years old. Honestly, it's probably not going to pass, but we might as well give it a try. Right?
Yes. I've been doing this.
Right.
I've been doing this. I've been like, let's just check the site survey to see if it works. And then
Yeah. Okay.
Like, because they might be missing out.
And that's why I close 90%. Nobody else in the industry closes at that percentage rate because of that. So when you do that, you become the top of your field. The trust level goes through the roof. So if you pair that closing style with the referral system and being intentional and coaching your clients, you are literally going to grow your business to the point where you can't keep up with referrals. Who? Drop the mic. Yeah, just. So no. So that's the opportunity here. If you guys want to follow me more on my social media channels, I'm Jonathan Charles Wilson on every single platform. That's my name. Text me at my business line there to get a copy of this presentation. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Can I stay up for 1 minute?
Yeah.
That was straight fire.
All right, guys. Yeah, thank you for that. Can we give it up one more time for Jonathan Charles Wilson properly?
Stop it.
I don't know if this is working, but hey, guys, before we go to a 5-minute bio break, and then we'll finish with one more training segment. Any questions for Jonathan while we have him? I mean, I've been in solar 10 years, and the eloquence and how you presented it, the pullback, how smooth you are, even the breath work and the guided, like, man, I was just tripping out, goosebumps. So massive applause.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you. You could pay as you want. I'm just kidding. Jordan, and then let's go. Go for it, Jordan.
What is your average timeline with presentations? Because I know I feel like we've been
Yeah.
trying to kind of pull it back. I've been trying to pull it back, making sure that my appointments are sub 1 hour. And then you get the clientele, and now we have a battery text. It
Yeah.
feels like it takes longer.
Average timeline for a presentation, homeowner presentation.
I'm on the same path with you right now, man. It's hard. My last 2 closed, I closed one last night and the night before, and they were over 2 hours both. It's really long. It's a marathon. And it's tough because there's so many things to get into. And if you really,
In person.
I do both of these in person. On Zoom, I'll do it a little bit shorter, but it's still maybe an hour and a half. It's really hard for me to get under an hour, even if I'm like concise and on point and I'm very specific with my language. So I haven't quite figured that one out yet. Yeah. We'll have to talk. Yeah.
Yeah, but with your close rate, I mean, that investment that you're doing in that rapport building,
It's strong.
it's making a freaking impact in a ripple way.
Correct. Like both of those homeowners, when I walked out of the door, oh, I got my neighbor, I'm going to talk to this person. I mean, referrals are happening there. Now, I can get referrals sometimes, like I said, at the actual install. These past 2 are giving me referrals at the close. So it depends on the rapport and the situation, but if I feel like there's a great rapport, I will invest that time to keep the momentum going. So although my intention is to keep it short and concise and not waste anyone's time, including my own, if we're on a roll, take advantage. Oh, you're putting me on the spot, man. I walk into the guy's house, and the daughter's walking me up to the front door, and she goes, "Hey, just a heads up, my dad's kind of an asshole." And I'm like, I've dealt with assholes. Like, that's not a problem. And I walk in, and I shake his hand, we sit down, and I always like to start with the hardest questions first, get all the BS out of the way. So I'm opening up my bag, and I'm like, "Hey, how long have you guys lived here?" And he's like, "Well, they're 22 years. And I go, "Wow, 22 years and you've managed to avoid getting solar? How have you done it?" And he goes, "Well, honestly, I think solar's a scam and this and that. It's not worth it. My sister did it. She's paying a double electric bill." He starts blah, 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 just vomiting all this stuff. And I go, "Okay, interesting. Well, there could be a few reasons why she's getting the bill. Maybe we could add some solar, blah, blah, blah." I kind of go into it a little bit, kind of stay calm. And he goes, "Well, no, I just think that this is a waste of time." And I go, "Well, why am I here?" I just stare him straight in the face. I go, "Why am I here?" And he goes, "Well, you're 15 minutes late," which I was. And I said, "Okay, well, then I'll leave right now." And then we're staring each other off. I'm starting to get red. I'm like, "Dude, why am I here?" I said, "I came here to help you. Okay, I came here to help you. I don't need to be here to help you." And then all the other family goes, like, the tension in the room was intense. So the family goes, no, he's just like that. Ignore him. We want to hear the presentation. And I said, "Okay, we'll do that." So I go on and I presented it and did the whole thing. And he signed, and it's a $22,000 margin. So, yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's actually a follow-up question to Jordan's. Yeah, how to keep them entertained throughout education about the system, keeping their attention on you, so they can understand everything you're explaining to them. A lot of times you fall off over conversation like this.
So you'll have to attend one of my closing trainings. People do not lose attention when I'm there. They're like, "Where do I sign?" So watch my closing training. There's too much there to give you just in one answer. Yeah.
Is that on knowledge base?
No, not yet. It'll be there.
I mean, even just hearing him present and watching him, the engagement, the question asking, name dropping, like check-ins, just the inflection in his voice. I mean, even just from today, I think we can see a few reasons why also.
I'm excited. Yeah, I got
Yeah.
to meet JB. Quick story. I don't think we shared this part. I actually installed his parents' solar.
Jonathan sold my parents solar 11 years ago. While I was at Solar City, my first few weeks in, And my price was like 60 grand because Solar City wasn't even selling solar back then. And he was at a local company and it was like 42 grand. My parents are like, the fuck?
Yeah.
We're going to sign with the other Jonathan.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's how we stay in touch. And I've watched your social media and your rise, and I've just always been impressed and glad to finally work together.
Yeah,
So,
it's a privilege to work with him, and it's just a testament that sometimes some of the best people you ever get to work with, the Cynthias, the Jonathans, they take a year or 2 or 9 months to court. Like, you're not going to recruit a whale with, a tiny little fishing pole. Like, you need to put in the time and the effort and drip on them until you get them to join, and then it can be massive for you. So that's what I've experienced.
Cool.
Another question or two?
No, I just wanted to make a comment. Who else in the crowd here can absolutely feel the genuineness coming
Thank you.
out of him?
Thank you.
Like, I'm serious.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
That's a huge
Thank you.
Because if people feel like you're crap, they're not going to want to continue to talk to you.
Right.
If they can feel like you're real, they're going to want to stay engaged with you.
Yeah.
You are so real, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
It radiates out of you. You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah.
Excellent point. Yeah.
Just one other comment.
Yeah.
And just kudos to you because you talked about like being negative, but you're not negative.
No,
You hitting every single major obstacle in the consultation. All the pros know, like you have to do that because if you happen to not sign one right away and they go somewhere else, you're not going to lose them to someone else because no one else is going to do that.
Great point.
It's not negative.
Yeah.
It's making sure you just hit all of those obstacles right
Thank you.
away.
We could probably
And
do
that
that.
just shows your level of
Competence.
professionalism.
Thank you.
Kudos to you. Great presentation.
Thank you. And one more thing, I actually guaranteed something at the beginning that you were going to get at least 5 figures worth of income. Who thinks they can go out and apply some of these things immediately and get at least 5 figures of income in the next 30 days?
Easy.
Let's go. Let's go. All right. I did my job. Thank you guys.